The CEO watched the gun shake in a corner store and chose the blind spot. I was buying medicine and one cheap birthday cupcake for my sick daughter when the robber pointed his pistol at the store owner. The woman in the $4,000 coat looked up at the security mirror, saw where the camera couldn't see, and stepped backward into safety. No call, no warning, no get down. So I moved. The gun fired into the ceiling. I hit the floor with the robber, pinned his wrist down, and heard him crying, "My brother needs his meds!" By midnight, strangers were calling me a hero. By morning, the CEO's company called me a liar. My job fired me for excessive risk conduct, and my daughter's clinic said her medication could be delayed. That's when I understood the robbery wasn't the worst thing I saw that night. The worst thing was watching a powerful woman decide who was worth saving. The ending of this story changed everything. Before we get there, take a quick second to join the community by hitting subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I was in Northline Market buying chicken noodle soup, children's cold medicine, and one cheap vanilla cupcake with blue frosting when the gun came out. It was Lena's birthday, and I had just finished a 12-hour medical courier shift running blood samples across half-frozen Chicago streets. My daughter was 11 that day, home in bed with a fever, and I had counted my cash twice before choosing the cupcake from the little plastic case by the register. The store was busy in that after-work way, people shaking snow off their coats, grabbing milk, lottery tickets, coffee, whatever got them through the night. Then the front door banged open, and a young man in a gray hoodie stepped inside with a pistol in his hand. "Register," he said, but his voice cracked. "Now!" Everybody froze except Omar, the owner, who slowly raised both hands behind the counter. Near the coffee station stood a woman in a long camel coat, the kind that looked too expensive for a corner grocery under the train tracks. She had a silver watch, perfect hair, and the stillness of someone used to people moving around her. I saw her reach toward her phone. Then she stopped. She looked up at the security mirror, saw where it caught the aisles, and stepped backward into the blind spot beneath it. No call, no scream, nothing. The robber grabbed an elderly woman's purse when she did not move fast enough, and when Omar's register drawer stuck, he swung the gun toward him. That was when I noticed the kid's hand shaking so hard the barrel kept dipping. There was a cheap pharmacy bracelet on his wrist, yellow paper, the kind clinics give when somebody has been waiting too long. And the safety on the gun was still half engaged. I set my soup down on the nearest shelf and lifted both hands. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low, "take mine first." I slid my wallet across the floor with my foot, then stepped just enough to put myself between the gun and the elderly woman. Nobody needs to get hurt over a drawer that sticks. His eyes jumped to me, then to Omar, then back to the wallet. That half-second was all I needed. I reached behind me, caught Omar's sleeve, and pulled him down as I shoved the woman toward the cereal aisle. The gun fired into the ceiling. Lights popped. People screamed. I drove into the kid low and hard, pinning his wrist to the floor until the pistol skidded under the chip rack. I did not hit him after that. I just held him there while he cried into the dirty tile and kept saying, "My brother needs his meds." Police came with sirens, questions, and blue lights bouncing off the windows. Customers called me a hero. Omar gripped my shoulder so tight his fingers shook. But while everyone looked at the gun, I looked toward the coffee station. The woman in the expensive coat was already walking out, calm as if she had only changed her mind about buying coffee. No statement, no glance back, just silence leaving through the door. And somehow, in a store full of frightened people, the richest person there was the only one who acted like nothing had happened. By morning, the hero story had already turned on me. A customer's video of me tackling the robber hit every local feed before sunrise, but the clip people shared most started after the gun went off. It showed me driving a young man into the tile, Omar yelling behind the counter, people screaming, and my courier jacket twisted up like I had brought violence into the store instead of trying to move it away from an old woman in a stuck register. By 8, My supervisor called and read from policy like he had not known me for 6 years. Physical intervention during public incidents creates exposure, he said. You're suspended pending review. Exposure. That word landed harder than Hero ever had. I had spent the night thinking maybe I had done one thing right. By breakfast, doing right had become a liability. Lena saw the video at school. I knew because she texted me only 3 words. I'm okay, Dad. That was what she sent when she was not okay and did not want me leaving work early. Later, she told me 2 boys in science class said I tackled the guy for internet fame, like I had risked a bullet for likes. Before I could answer her, Mercy West Clinic called about the insurance payment. If it missed processing again, Lena's next medication shipment could be delayed. I stood in my kitchen with her birthday cupcake still in the fridge, blue frosting smashed against the plastic lid, and listened to a billing clerk politely explain how fast a child's treatment can become a scheduling problem. Omar called after that and asked me to come by the market. He hugged me in the stockroom, slipped a grocery credit envelope into my hand, and said, "For your little girl." I gave it back. His ceiling still had a bullet hole. His register drawer was taped shut. I could not take from a man whose store had almost died in front of me. At the station, I gave my statement and told the officer about the woman in the expensive coat who stepped into the blind spot under the security mirror and left before police arrived. He scrolled through the witness list and shook his head. No woman like that listed. That afternoon, a reporter named Grace Holloway called me. She did not ask if I felt like a hero. She asked, "Do you know why the CEO of CrossBridge Assurance was in that store and disappeared before police took statements?" I sat down slowly. CrossBridge. Their risk software touched courier policies, clinics, small business insurance, half the systems working people only notice when something goes wrong. That night, my suspension became termination for excessive risk conduct. I read the email beside Lena's unopened medicine notice and realized one silent woman could cost my daughter more than the robber ever took. The call from CrossBridge came just after I got Lena to sleep. A man named Martin Vale said Ms. Cross wanted to clarify witness details before misinformation created unnecessary harm. He used words like that the way people use gloves to touch something dirty. By 10 the next morning, I was standing outside CrossBridge Tower, looking up at glass so clean it reflected the city without letting any of it in. They did not bring me through the front doors. A security guard walked me around to a side entrance where delivery drivers scanned badges beside trash bins and stacked bottled water for conference rooms upstairs. I waited 40 minutes beside carts of catered lunches while executives passed close enough for me to smell their coffee and still never looked at my face. Vivian Cross arrived late with Martin at her shoulder. She wore a dark suit, a silver watch, and the same calm expression she had worn while stepping out of the market. "Mr. Brooks," she said, sitting across from me in a small conference room with no windows. "Thank you for reducing public harm." Not saving Omar, not protecting that woman, reducing public harm, like the robbery had been a spill on a marble floor. Martin slid a folder toward me. "CrossBridge has resources for citizens placed under sudden strain," he said. "A hardship grant, no admission, no publicity." The number on the first page would have covered Lena's medicine, rent, groceries, and the clinic balance I kept folded behind the microwave. Then I saw the attached statement. I was supposed to sign that Vivian Cross had not been present inside North Line Market during the robbery. I pushed the folder back. "She was by the coffee station," I said, "under the security mirror." She looked at her phone, looked at the blind spot, and stepped into it. Vivian's face did not move much, but her fingers touched the edge of her watch. "People with children should understand," she said, "that survival sometimes requires discretion." I thought of Lena's text from school. "I'm okay, Dad." I thought of the medicine notice on our table and the cupcake I still had not watched her eat. "My daughter is exactly why I can't sell the truth," I said. "She already knows too many adults make fear sound responsible." Martin closed the folder slowly. His voice stayed soft. Hero narratives are fragile, Mr. Brooks. Background checks often complicate them. He did not have to explain. Lost job, late rent, medical bills, a dead wife, a sick child. They could turn my whole life into motive if they wanted. I left CrossBridge with no job, no grant, and no protection, walking past the same delivery carts I had waited beside. Outside, the wind came hard between the towers. My phone buzzed with a missed call from Lena's clinic, and for the first time I understood CrossBridge was not just trying to erase one silent woman from a robbery. They were getting ready to search every weak place in my life. I went to the preliminary hearing because I could not get the robber's wrist out of my head. Not the gun, not the shot into the ceiling. The wrist. That cheap yellow pharmacy bracelet had flashed under his sleeve while he was pointing a pistol at Omar, and I had seen the same kind of bracelet on Lena so many times that my body recognized it before my mind did. The courthouse smelled like wet coats and old coffee. I sat in the back row while they brought him in wearing county orange, hands cuffed, head down. His name was Caleb Ross, 24 years old, former warehouse worker, injured on a loading dock 6 months earlier. Claim denied after automated risk review. The words came out of the prosecutor's mouth like weather reports, but Caleb's mother put both hands over her face when she heard them read in public. Outside the courtroom, I saw his little brother before I saw Vivian Cross. The boy was maybe 16, too thin for his winter jacket, sitting on a bench with one knee bouncing and a Mercy West clinic bracelet around his wrist. Same color, same barcode style, same place Lena's bracelet rubbed her skin after long appointments. His mother was arguing quietly with a public defender about prescription costs, saying the pharmacy would not release the refill without payment, saying Caleb had only meant to scare Omar, saying he had never hurt anybody before things got bad. I stood there holding my hat in both hands, and the whole robbery shifted in my mind. The kid who had pointed a gun at us had not walked into Northline Market because he wanted a headline. He had walked in because the systems that were supposed to catch people had turned his brother into paperwork. Vivian appeared near the courthouse elevators in a black coat, alone except for a man from her legal office checking his phone. She was not there for Caleb. I could tell by the way she did not look toward his family until I did. CrossBridge was monitoring exposure, liability, narrative, all the clean words people use when they do not want to say a human being's name. I stepped in front of her before she could turn down the hall. "Did your software deny his claim?" I asked. Her eyes moved past me to the bench where Caleb's brother coughed into his sleeve. "Our systems flag risk patterns," she said. "They don't deny people." The boy coughed again, harder this time, and his mother reached into a pharmacy bag that looked too empty. Vivian stopped speaking before the sentence could save her. Grace Holloway found me by the vending machines 10 minutes later. She had already pulled lawsuits I did not know existed, quiet cases settled before trial, injured workers flagged as probable exaggerators, families waiting weeks for approvals while bills stacked up and medicine ran out. "CrossBridge touches more than robbery insurance," she said. "It touches whether people are believed when they're hurt." I looked back toward Caleb's brother, then at my phone, where Mercy West had left another message about Lena's medication schedule. The man who had put a gun in Omar's face was not innocent. I still remembered the elderly woman's purse hitting the floor and the shot cracking above our heads. But standing in that courthouse, I had to carry a harder truth than anger. Caleb had done wrong, and he had also been crushed by the same kind of machine now pressing down on my daughter. The notice from my landlord came taped to the basement door with blue painter's tape, like he was trying to be polite about pulling the floor out from under us. He had heard I lost the courier job. Everybody hears everything when you live below a two-flat with thin walls and shared pipes. 30 days to cure the late rent or vacate. Without night routes, late rent was not a problem I could solve with fewer groceries or skipped coffee. It was math with a locked door at the end. I found Lena at the kitchen table when I came in, sliding a Mercy West bill under her science worksheet with one careful finger. She thought I did not see it. That hurt worse than the number. My 11-year-old daughter had learned to hide medical warnings like other kids hide bad grades. I sat across from her after she went to bed and stared at Martin Vale's card until the black letters blurred. The settlement was still there if I wanted it. Hardship grant, witness clarification. One signature saying Vivian Cross had never been in Northline Market, and we could keep the apartment. Lena's medication could ship on time. The fridge could have more than eggs, mustard, and half a carton of milk. My thumb was on Martin's number when Lena came back out in her socks, holding the bill she had tried to hide. She did not ask about the amount. She asked, "Dad, is telling the truth why we might have to move again?" I put the phone face down. For a second, all I could see was Rachel at this same table years ago, hair pulled back, hospital bracelet still on her wrist after a shift, telling me children did not need perfect fathers. They needed fathers who did not teach them to lie because fear made it convenient. The next morning, I went back to Northline Market to apologize to Omar. The bullet hole in the ceiling had been patched with a square of white board that did not match, and the register drawer still stuck when he opened it. "You don't owe me sorry," he said, but I could tell business had slowed. People crossed the street now, like being robbed was something a store could catch. He poured me coffee I did not ask for and pulled a thick envelope from under the counter. "Insurance cancellation," he said. "They say the incident changed my risk profile." The letter had CrossBridge language all over it. Automated threat exposure, repeat loss probability, policy non-renewal. Omar's hands were steady until he turned the page with the new premium quote. Then one finger tapped the counter, once, twice, like he was counting how many years of work could be erased by a formula. That was when the whole shape of it hit me. CrossBridge was not only trying to make me disappear from Vivian's story, it was punishing Omar for being robbed, Caleb's family for being poor and hurt, Lena for needing medicine, and me for refusing to let silence become official. I looked at Omar's tired face, at the patched ceiling, at the coffee he still gave away to kids waiting for the bus, and I knew what saying yes to Martin would buy. It would buy my daughter a little safety by leaving everyone else alone in the machine. I took out my phone and called Grace Holloway before I could lose my nerve. I told her I would speak publicly, even if no courier company ever hired me again, even if Mercy West delayed Lena's next shipment, even if Vivian Cross used every polished floor in that tower to grind my life down. Because being good was not supposed to make us homeless, but lying would make sure the next family got robbed twice. Grace's story went live at 6:03 in the morning, and by 6:20 my phone sounded like it had come loose from the wall. The headline did not call me a hero. It asked why the CEO of CrossBridge Assurance had disappeared from Northline Market before police took statements. Grace named Vivian Cross as the missing witness, named the blind spot under the security mirror, named my statement, Omar's memory, and the questions CrossBridge would not answer. By breakfast, CrossBridge issued a denial so polished it barely touched the floor. Ms. Cross has no recollection of the alleged presence described by an interested party. Alleged. Interested party. They made the truth sound like something I had invented because rent was late. Inside CrossBridge Tower, Vivian confronted Martin hard enough that people outside the conference room heard glass rattle. I only learned that later, but I can imagine him standing there with his soft voice and dry hands, letting her anger spend itself before he used the one thing he knew would stop her. He reminded her of a sealed incident 12 years earlier, a subway platform after midnight, a man being beaten near the stairs. Vivian, younger then, frozen behind a column while another commuter stepped in and took the worst of it. The file had been buried when she became valuable enough for powerful people to protect. Martin told her silence had kept her alive once, and it could still keep her company alive now. That was the cruelty of it. He did not just threaten her career. He used her oldest shame like a leash. While they were doing that, strangers online were making me into whatever CrossBridge needed me to be. Desperate unemployed dad, failed courier, sick kid at home, man looking for a payday. Some people said I should have taken Martin's money and kept my mouth shut. Others said I had probably staged the robbery angle with Grace. Lena's school counselor called before noon and suggested, carefully, that maybe I should keep her away from media attention because parents were concerned. Concerned. That word again. Lena came out of school that afternoon with her backpack high on both shoulders and her head down, walking between reporters like she was trying to make herself narrow enough not to be noticed. Vivian saw that footage in her office. Lena's little shoulders rounded forward, her eyes on the sidewalk, adults shouting questions around her. Later, Grace told me Vivian watched it more than once. Maybe she saw my daughter. Maybe she saw herself at 29, leaving a subway station with the same posture after deciding survival meant letting someone else bleed. Whatever she saw, it moved something. She ordered the full Northline Market security footage, not the clipped version, not the angle Martin's team had already reviewed, but everything. The coffee station, the mirror, the blind spot, the moment I raised my hands before the gun fired. Martin got to one internal copy first. He deleted it, then walked into Vivian's office and told her the remaining footage was dangerous, incomplete, and legally contaminated. She asked him whether it showed her hiding. He said, "It shows enough to end your career if you let the wrong people define it." Vivian looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time the silence that had always protected her started looking like another kind of prison. CrossBridge filed the defamation warning the same morning Lena had her clinic appointment. Grace forwarded it to me with one sentence. "They are trying to scare us before the truth gets legs." The letter said I had fabricated Vivian Cross's presence for financial leverage and reputational harm. By lunch, Martin's people had fed reporters just enough of my life to make me look bought before anyone found the money. My late rent, my job suspension, Lena's medical costs, the missed insurance payment. Nothing illegal, nothing false. Just pieces of a hard life arranged like evidence. They did not have to call me a liar. They only had to show everybody I was broke and let the world decide honesty was something people like me could not afford. Reporters gathered outside our basement steps before I could get Lena to the car. "Mr. Brooks, did you invent the CEO story for a payout?" one shouted. Another asked if my daughter's illness made me desperate enough to target CrossBridge. Lena kept her eyes on her shoes and held my hand too tight. From the upstairs porch, I heard Mrs. Denby whisper to somebody, "He should have taken the money instead of pretending to be noble." Lena heard it too. Her fingers loosened in mine for 1 second, like the words had made her unsure where to put her trust. I wanted to turn around and answer every camera, every neighbor, every person who thought poverty automatically made a man dishonest. Instead, I opened the car door and said, "Clinic first." Mercy West was crowded, warm, and tired in the way places get when too many families are waiting on permission to be cared for. Nurse Nora Kim checked Lena's vitals and gave me a look that said she had seen the news but was not going to make my child carry it. While Lena stepped onto the scale, Nora lowered her voice. "You're not the only family seeing delays after CrossBridge reviews," she said. "We've got approvals bouncing back for kids who were stable last month." In the waiting room, I saw Caleb's little brother sitting 2 rows away, the same Mercy West bracelet on his wrist, his mother holding a pharmacy bag folded flat in her lap. Lena saw him too. Caleb had pointed a gun at innocent people. My daughter needed medicine because systems kept turning care into paperwork. His brother did too. No one knew where to place the blame without dropping part of the truth. His mother looked at me once, then away. I nodded because I had nothing better to offer. She nodded back like apology and defense had gotten tangled in her throat. That was when the clinic doors opened and Vivian Cross stepped inside. No Martin, no cameras, just her, standing under the buzzing fluorescent lights, looking at rows of children whose lives her company's tools had helped turn into risk categories. She saw Lena. She saw Caleb's brother. Her hand moved toward the sign-in desk, then stopped. She could not make herself enter the room. After a long second, she turned and left, and the door closed behind her without a sound. Omar found the backup because the lottery machine stopped working. That was how strange the truth came back to us. He was behind the counter, moving old cables and dusting off a little black recorder the installer had hidden under the shelf years earlier, when he saw a storage light still blinking. The police had taken the main security copy. Martin's people had reviewed what Omar gave them and acted like that was all the store had. But this old unit had been recording a wider feed from the mirror camera, the one angled over the coffee station in the front aisle. Omar called me before closing and said, "Evan, you need to come see what they missed." When I got there, he locked the front door, turned the monitor around, and pressed play. The video showed everything the clips online had cut into pieces. Vivian at the coffee station, phone in hand, looking up at the security mirror before stepping back into the blind spot. Me setting the soup down and raising both hands before I ever moved toward Caleb. The elderly woman frozen by the candy rack. Omar's register sticking. Caleb's shaking wrist. The pharmacy bracelet. The gun drifting toward the counter. Then me sliding my wallet across the floor and talking low. Not lunging, not chasing fame, just trying to keep a bullet from choosing someone weaker than me. The footage kept going after police left, too. A man in a gray suit came in the next day, Martin's investigator, leaning over Omar's counter and saying certain memories could create insurance complications. Omar paused the screen there. "If we release this," he said, "CrossBridge comes down on me, on you, on Grace, maybe even the clinic. Men like Martin do not lose quietly." I took the drive home in my coat pocket like it weighed 10 pounds. That night, after Lena finished her inhaler and pretended not to watch me pace the kitchen, I imagined sending the video straight to every station in Chicago with one sentence: "Here is your fearless CEO hiding." It would destroy Vivian in an hour. Part of me wanted that hour. I wanted her to feel cameras pressing against her face the way they had pressed against my basement steps. Lena finally closed her notebook and asked, "Dad, is showing the truth to hurt someone the same as showing it to stop harm?" I sat down because the question took the anger out of my legs. The video could be a weapon, or it could be a door. Rachel would have known the difference faster than I did. I gave the drive to Grace the next morning with one condition. "Do not make this only about Vivian hiding," I told her. "Include Caleb's denied claim, Omar's insurance cancellation, Mercy West delays, all of it." Grace nodded and built the report like a chain, each link tied to a person CrossBridge had turned into risk. When it published, the public turned hard. Not just because Vivian stepped away, but because the video showed who moved toward danger and who hid from it. Then showed her company pressuring the people left bleeding afterward. Vivian watched herself that afternoon inside CrossBridge Tower, alone except for Martin standing near the door. On screen, I moved toward Caleb while she moved into shadow. When it ended, Martin did not comfort her. He said the board expected her to blame me, question the video chain, and protect the company at all costs. Vivian Cross came to my apartment after dark without Martin, without security, and without one of those cameras CEOs pretend not to notice. I saw her shadow through the basement window before she knocked. The old radiator was banging behind me, Lena's medicine cup was on the counter, and the kitchen table looked like every private thing in our life had been dragged into daylight. Eviction notice, clinic schedule, unpaid invoices, insurance letters, and Lena's notebook with "Good things Dad did" written across the cover in blue marker. I opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. "You don't get to come here for forgiveness," I said. She looked smaller outside the tower, standing under the porch bulb while snowmelt dripped from the stairs above her. "I came because I need to understand what my company did," she said. "You had years to understand," I told her, and started to close the door. Then Lena coughed from the bedroom, that tight, scraping cough that made every fatherly argument disappear. I left Vivian at the door and went for the water, the inhaler pouch, the medication schedule taped to the fridge. Lena sat up with her hair stuck to her cheek, trying to wave me off like she was fine. Vivian stepped inside without being invited all the way, then stopped when she saw the room. Not poverty like a statistic. Poverty with names on it. Mercy West at 9:30. Rent past due. Appeal denied. Refill pending. On top of the papers sat Lena's notebook, open to a page that said, "Dad bought soup even when he didn't eat dinner." Vivian stared at that line longer than she should have. "The robbery wasn't the first time I watched paperwork decide who gets protected," I said, keeping my voice low so Lena could breathe. I opened the locked drawer under the microwave and pulled out Rachel's old folder, edges soft from years of being handled and never solved. My wife needed emergency transport authorization. It got delayed. The system said her case required additional review. Vivian shook her head before she even knew what she was denying. CrossBridge didn't exist in that form then. I handed her the appeal letter, the denial code, the acquisition notice from the company CrossBridge later absorbed. "Your predecessor system did. And when you bought it, you bought the ghosts too." She read standing up, one hand pressed flat against the paper like she needed the table to stay steady. Rachel's name was there, the date, the delay. The appeal I had written at 2 a.m. with a baby monitor beside me and no lawyer to call. Vivian's face did not break exactly, but the polish went out of it. Lena looked at her from the bedroom doorway and asked, "Do rich people ever feel bad before someone proves what they did?" Vivian did not answer. She wrote Rachel's case number on her palm with my pen, folded her fingers around it, and left without asking me to believe anything yet. But the woman who walked up those basement stairs was not the same one who had walked down. Vivian found Rachel's file in an archive room 3 floors below the executive suites, in a database CrossBridge only mentioned when lawyers needed distance. I did not see her find it, but later I learned she searched the case number written on her palm until the old system opened like a grave. Emergency transport authorization request. Delayed pending risk triage. Secondary review recommended. The words were clean enough to survive court, but the model note underneath was not. Rachel Brooks had scored low economic recovery value because she worked part-time after Lena was born, carried high medical debt, and lived in a zip code the system had already marked as elevated cost exposure. My wife's ambulance transfer had not been delayed because no one knew she needed help. It had been delayed because a model decided help spent on her would not return enough. Vivian kept reading until she found Martin's name buried in the acquisition notes. He had helped review predecessor liabilities when CrossBridge absorbed the old platform, and Rachel's case was one of dozens marked for quiet retention. No public disclosure, no family notification. The phrase they used was acceptable loss exposure. I received the file that evening in an unmarked envelope under our basement door. No note, no apology, just copies. I sat at the kitchen table after Lena went to bed and read until that phrase stopped being English and became something sharp in my mouth. Acceptable loss exposure. Rachel had been 34. She wore yellow socks on night shifts because she said sick rooms needed one unreasonable color. She used to cut Lena's grapes into quarters even when she was exhausted. She had held my wrist in the emergency room and whispered, "Don't scare the baby," while I tried to find out why transport had not come. I folded the paper carefully before my hands could tear it, because Lena was asleep in the next room and I did not want those words loose where she could see them. But children always see more than we cover. Lena came out for water and stopped when she saw the file. I slid the top page under another. Too late. Her eyes caught her mother's name, the transport delay, the numbers beside the risk score. She did not ask what economic recovery value meant. She looked at Rachel's picture on the fridge, then at the folded paper in my hand, and understood enough. Adults had taken her mother's life and turned it into a calculation. She walked back to bed without a sound, and that silence did more damage than any question would have. I went to CrossBridge Tower before sunrise and waited near the front entrance, where executives stepped around me like weather. When Vivian came through the revolving doors, I held up the file. "Did you know?" I asked. No greeting, no cameras, just the paper between us. Her face changed when she saw Rachel's name. "I didn't know her name," she said. I stepped closer. "That is not what I asked." Vivian looked past me at the building, then back at the file. "I knew the platform had legacy harm," she said. "I knew there were cases we were advised not to reopen. I told myself acquisition cleanup was not the same as responsibility." The wind pushed at the papers in my hand. I could have called Grace right there. I could have destroyed Vivian before breakfast, and every person watching would have understood why. But if CrossBridge turned Rachel's file into a private legal war, the clinics, workers, Omar, Caleb's brother, all of it could disappear behind sealed defense. For the first time, revenge was not the hard part. Waiting was. The board offer came through Martin in a private room at a downtown law office, not CrossBridge Tower. Too many cameras there now. He set the agreement in front of me like he was offering shelter from a storm his company had built. The number was so large I had to read it 3 times. Rachel's case, Lena's future care, lost work, emotional damages, housing support, education fund. It was everything I had ever prayed for at 2 in the morning when the fridge hummed louder than my hope. Then Martin turned to the last pages. Confidentiality. No further cooperation with Grace Holloway. No contact with Omar Delgado regarding claims activity. No coordination with Caleb Ross's family. No public statements about Mercy West clinic delays. Martin folded his hands. "This is the responsible choice for a father with a sick child," he said. "You have carried enough. Let professionals handle the rest." I hated him for saying the one thing that sounded almost true. That money would guarantee Lena's medication for years. It would get us out of the basement. It would give my daughter a bedroom where pipes did not knock all night. I was still looking at the education fund line when I heard a small sound behind the door. Lena had come with Nora from the clinic and arrived early. She had heard enough. She stepped inside holding her blue inhaler pouch and asked, "If we take it, do the other kids still have to fight alone?" Martin looked away first. I carried the settlement papers to the lakefront memorial walk where I used to sit after Rachel died, when Lena was little and I did not know how to go home to a crib without her mother. The lake was gray and rough, slapping the wall like it wanted to tear the city loose. I sat on the same bench where I had once begged God for one ordinary morning back. Vivian appeared near the railing, wrapped in a dark coat, no driver in sight. "How did you know I'd be here?" I asked. She looked at the papers in my hand. "Rachel's transport map," she said. "The route passed here. I wanted to see the geography we turned into a case file." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Vivian said, "The board will bury everything unless one of us risks losing what we want most." I looked at the settlement again. It had Lena's safety written all over it, and everyone else's silence buried underneath. I stood, folded the papers once, and handed them back to her. "Tell your board I'm done taking private offers for public harm," I said. "I want a hearing. CrossBridge's risk systems, clinic delays, worker denials, small business cancellations, all of it." Vivian held the papers against her chest like they were heavier than money. "They'll come for you harder," she said. I looked toward the water, then back at her. They already did. Now they can do it where everybody sees. City Hall opened the hearing in a room that smelled like old wood, coffee, and wet winter coats. Every seat was filled before I got there. Reporters stood along the back wall. Clinic families sat beside small business owners, injured workers, insurance lobbyists, and CrossBridge lawyers with matching folders. The city seal hung behind the council table, and for a second I thought about turning around. Rachel's file was in my bag. Lena's medication schedule was folded in my coat. My whole life had become evidence, and I still had to sit upright while strangers decided whether pain made a man honest or unreliable. Martin went first because men like him always find a way to stand before the wounded. He did not call me a liar right away. He called me emotionally compromised, financially pressured, vulnerable to media influence. Then he put pieces of my life on the screen: late rent, job termination, clinic balance, rejected settlement, Rachel's appeal letters. He made refusing hush money sound like instability. He made loving my daughter sound like motive. Lena was not allowed inside during that part, but the doors did not seal out voices. Through the little glass panel, I saw her on the bench outside with Nora Kim, hands folded around her inhaler pouch, listening to adults debate whether her father was too desperate to be trusted. Omar testified after me, and he did not dress up his words. He wore the same flannel shirt he wore behind the counter, and his hands rested flat on the table like he was keeping himself from reaching across it. "Evan Brooks saved lives in my store," he said. "Then CrossBridge punished my store for surviving a robbery." He held up the cancellation notice and the premium quote that would close Northline Market by spring. Nora Kim came next with clinic records stripped of names, but not of meaning. Children whose medications stalled after review. Families told to resubmit forms while treatment windows narrowed. Parents sleeping in chairs because a system flagged them as high risk instead of human. Then Caleb's little brother stepped to the microphone. His voice was so quiet, the room leaned forward. "My brother did wrong," he said, "but he had been asking for help for weeks. He wasn't trying to be famous. He was trying to get my medicine." By the time Vivian Cross was called, the room felt tighter than when we started. She walked to the table with Martin's eyes fixed on her back. I knew what he expected: careful language, limited admission, regret without responsibility. Vivian placed both hands on the table and looked first at Lena through the glass, then at Omar, then at Caleb's brother. "CrossBridge hid behind risk language," she said under oath. "We called delays review. We called cancellations exposure. We called families patterns, and real people carried the cost." Martin's pen stopped moving. The room shifted like everybody had heard a door unlock. She had not saved herself, not yet. But she had finally stopped asking silence to do it for her. Vivian did not stop after that first admission. She could have. Martin's whole body seemed to be waiting for her to retreat into softer words, but she stayed at the microphone with both hands flat on the table. "I was present during the Northline Market robbery," she said. The room went so still I could hear the heating vent click above us. "I stood near the coffee station. I saw the gun. I saw Mr. Brooks move toward danger, and I chose silence." A reporter near the back whispered something into her phone and rushed for the hallway. Another followed. Vivian kept going. "Afterward, Martin Vale and members of our legal team pressured witnesses, challenged the footage chain, and suppressed internal copies that showed my presence. They did it to protect CrossBridge, and I allowed a culture where that seemed normal." Martin stood halfway from his chair. "That is a gross distortion." His voice carried farther than Vivian's had, sharp with panic under the polish. The council chair warned him to sit, but he stayed standing long enough to say, "Ms. Cross authorized containment protocols. She reviewed exposure summaries. She cannot pretend innocence now because public opinion has shifted." Vivian turned toward him, and for the first time since I had known her, she did not look afraid of what he knew. "You are right that I am not innocent," she said. "But containment is the word we used when we did not want to say cover-up." Then she looked back at the council. Rachel Brooks's emergency transport file was buried after acquisition. The phrase acceptable loss exposure came from our risk culture. It was not a typo. It was not one bad employee. It was the language of a company that trained itself to survive by measuring which people were easiest to ignore. The room broke open. People shouted. Cameras shifted. Reporters pushed through the doors so fast one of them dropped a notebook under a chair. Phones lit up everywhere. Someone said CrossBridge stock was dropping in real time. Martin's face had gone pale, but he still tried to pull Vivian down with him. He named meetings, memos, signatures, every polished step that had led to this ugly center. I watched her lose the protection she had once valued more than truth. The board, the legal shield, the perfect language, the distance between her and the people sitting in that room. She did not fight to keep it. She let it fall where everyone could see. Then Vivian asked to address Lena. My daughter had been brought back inside after Martin's presentation ended, and she sat beside Nora with her inhaler pouch in her lap, looking smaller than any child should look in a government room. Vivian turned fully toward her. "Lena," she said, voice lower now, "no child should have to prove their parent mattered. Your mother mattered before a file said she did. Your father mattered before we believed him. And I am sorry I helped build a place where you had to show us pain before we recognized truth." Lena did not answer right away. She only held the pouch tighter and looked at me, like she wanted to know if an apology could be safe. I wanted to let those words heal more than they could. But Rachel was still gone. Omar still had cancellation papers. Caleb's brother still had delayed medicine. Clinic families still lived one review away from disaster. So when the council chair asked whether I accepted Vivian's apology as sufficient, I said, "No, not without repair." Vivian closed her eyes once, then nodded. By the end of the hearing, the city ordered emergency oversight of CrossBridge systems, and they asked me to help design a victim access fund and claims review board. I walked out with Lena's hand in mine, knowing the truth had finally entered the record, but the harder work was waiting outside the cameras. Reporters surrounded me before Lena and I made it down the City Hall steps. Microphones came at my face from every side, and the questions were not really questions. They were invitations to swing. "Mr. Brooks, do you want Vivian Cross fired today? Should CrossBridge be destroyed? Do you believe Martin Vale should be prosecuted immediately? After what they did to your wife, are you ready to take everything from them?" I looked past the cameras and saw Vivian standing near the columns, alone for the first time since all this began. No board members beside her. No Martin whispering procedure into her ear. No perfect CEO polish left to hide behind. Just a woman the whole city had finally seen in the blind spot. For 1 second, I wanted to give them what they came for. I thought of the gun shaking in Northline Market, Omar's hands raised behind the register, the elderly woman's purse hitting the floor. I thought of Rachel's file on my kitchen table, those words folded carefully so Lena would not see them. Acceptable loss exposure. I thought of clinic bills hidden under school papers, my daughter listening through City Hall doors while grown-ups debated whether poverty made me untrustworthy. I thought of Caleb's brother coughing in the courthouse hallway, Omar's store being punished for surviving a robbery, and Vivian stepping backward under that security mirror while the rest of us had nowhere to hide. I had the perfect chance to make her small. I could have turned to the cameras and made her beg for mercy from the kind of people her company had measured, delayed, denied, and erased. Instead, I looked at Lena. She was holding her blue inhaler pouch against her coat, watching me like the whole meaning of truth was about to be explained by what I did next. So I turned back to the microphones. "I don't want a public begging scene," I said. "I want public repair." The reporters quieted because cruelty would have been easier to quote. "Reopen the denied claims tied to CrossBridge risk scoring. Create emergency medical transport protections that no algorithm can delay without human review. Build small business robbery protections so stores like Omar's don't get punished for being victims. Put clinic appeal advocates inside places like Mercy West, paid by CrossBridge, but controlled by independent oversight. And create a fund for families harmed by risk scores, with decisions made in the open." Martin's name came next because repair without accountability is just theater. Martin Vale is removed immediately and investigated for witness pressure, evidence suppression, and false filings. Board members who approved or ignored suppression answer to no quiet retirement, no sealed exit package. Vivian stepped forward then, and every camera moved with her. She did not ask to stay CEO as if the title still belonged to her. She said, "I will remain only under independent oversight with Mr. Brooks, clinic representatives, small business owners, worker advocates, and public officials holding real authority over the repair process." Her voice did not shake, but it did not perform strength either. For once, she sounded like a person agreeing to be watched. A reporter asked if I would accept compensation. I said yes. Rachel's case deserved compensation. Lena's care would be secured. My lost work and damages would be addressed. But not hush money. Not revenge money. Not a payout that bought my silence while other families kept fighting alone. Lena slipped her hand into mine at the bottom of the steps, and I felt her fingers settle there, steady this time. That was when I understood truth had never been meant to make me powerful. It was meant to make invisible people impossible to ignore. The program CrossBridge signed was not a promise printed for cameras. It was filed with the city, backed by penalties, and watched by people who had learned not to trust clean language without teeth. Claims review, emergency access, human appeal before denial, medical transport protections that could not be buried inside risk scoring. City officials monitored it, but so did clinics, workers, small business owners, and people who had once been told their suffering was not statistically urgent. Omar's store got fair coverage restored, and Northline Market became a neighborhood safety partner instead of a punished risk site. He put a small sign by the register that said, "Safe waiting spot," and kids started coming back after school to use the microwave, buy $1 cocoa, and stand under lights that no longer felt like they were waiting for something bad to happen. Caleb received sentencing consideration tied to restitution, treatment access, and the truth about what pushed him into that store with a shaking gun. That did not erase what he did. Omar still flinched when the register drawer stuck. The elderly woman still had her purse strap repaired with silver tape. But Caleb's brother got his medical coverage restored, and for the first time his mother did not have to beg a pharmacy clerk while strangers listened. Martin faced investigation for witness pressure, evidence suppression, and fraud. People asked me if that felt good. I told them I had stopped measuring justice by how badly one man slept. I checked whether the first reopened claims were paid. I called Nora to ask if transport approvals were moving faster. I stopped by Omar's to see if the premium correction had actually cleared. It turned out repair was quieter than revenge and required more phone calls. Vivian changed slowly, which was the only kind of change I trusted. She came to clinic meetings without cameras and sat in metal chairs while denied families told her what it felt like to wait for permission while a child got sicker. At first, she wanted to answer every pain with a policy sentence. Then she learned to let silence work differently. Not the old silence that hid, a new one that made room. My courier record was cleared, but I did not go back to running routes the same way. Mercy West asked me to help rebuild urgent transport access for families who did not know how to fight forms at midnight. Lena's treatment stabilized. The bills did not vanish, but they stopped arriving like threats. And one morning, I found her Good Things Dad Did notebook sitting openly on the kitchen table instead of hidden in her backpack. The last time Vivian and I spoke about the robbery, we were standing inside Northline Market beneath the security mirror, the same mirror that had caught everything except the place she chose to hide. Omar was restocking soup cans behind us, and the patched square in the ceiling still did not match. Vivian looked up at the mirror and said, "I used to think silence kept people alive." Then she looked at me. "You showed me silence can also choose who gets hurt." I did not tell her it was all forgiven. Some things become part of the floor you walk on. But I nodded. because she had finally said it without hiding behind a company word. That evening, Lena and I walked home past Northline Market with snow starting to fall under the streetlights. She carried her notebook against her chest, then stopped under the awning, opened it, and showed me the last page. In careful blue letters, she had written, "He stayed." Then she closed it, like the story did not need proving anymore. The robbery did not make me a hero. It just made everyone finally see what ordinary fathers do every day. We stay when fear would be easier. We stay when money asks us to lie. We stay because somebody small is watching, trying to learn whether the world is still worth trusting.